So x squared breaks into x. What multiplies to negative 8 and adds to positive 2? So we actually get two answers here. You set each of those equal to 0, you get x equals 4 and x equals 2. It is possible to have multiple answers on these. You certainly encourage you to check them. We didn't do anything that would cause us to get answers that don't work when we check them. So as long as your process was correct, then your answer should be correct. Are those okay? I want to do this one. There were some on the handout, so I know it's not due today. I told you you were ready to try 1 through 16, and hopefully you did that. But there were 1 or 2 that had radicals in them. So what am I going to do with a radical? How am I going to rewrite the cube root of x, or the cube root of 5? How am I going to write 1/5? Okay, so we did 5 to the negative 1/3 x equals 5. When you multiply these, you have to distribute the negative ones, so negative x minus 2. So if we set those equal, set our exponents equal. If we add over the x, then you can divide by 2/3 or multiply by 3/2, and we get negative 3. Is that okay? Any others on last night's homework that maybe caused you some issues or you had a question over? I can do something similar if you need to. There was one that had something like I don't remember what was on the left, so I'll just make up something. Let's say I gave you this and told you to solve that. What would we use for the common base there? We don't want to do 1 because 1, we have to change it. E would work, 1 over E would work, any of those are fine. So 1 over E squared, you would change that to E to the negative second if I want to bring it up. Okay, 1. If I'm trying to change that to a base of E, you can change 1 to any base you want. E to what power equals 1? 0. So negative 2x plus 6 equals 0. We get x to be 3. Any questions about that one? So the last problems on that handout, we hadn't done any quite like it, so I want to make sure I cover something along those lines. how is this one different? Right, my variable is my base, not my exponent. So let's just rewrite this. Z to the 5/2. What is that as a radical? 5/2 means the okay. So if you're trying to solve for Z, what do you think you would do? Square each side. That would work. Okay, so I get Z to the 5th equals, what is 32 squared? How do you get rid of a 5th power? 5th root. Do you need a plus or minus for that? No. So we get Z equals, the 5th root of 1024 is, so if you're looking for your base, just set it up with radicals and solve it. Is that okay? So, you can now finish that handout. I want to teach the second part of this, which is interest problems. Do you want me to give you a few minutes to work on this handout and make sure you're okay on that before I teach the second part? Okay. Is that all right? So I'm going to give you not a ton of time, but a little bit of time right now. You can finish that handout that was posted. The second part in this section, just because we're talking about exponential equations, it does talk about interest. Now we've done simple interest, I equals PRT, but that's not usually how interest is calculated. Typically we have compound interest, so you're building interest continually. So just some common things you're going to hear me say, and I did pass out a notes handout for this while you guys were working, so you've got that. When I say annually, what does that mean?
Once a year.
Once a year. What does semi-annual mean?
2 years.
It's actually saying 2 times per year. If I say quarterly, 4 times per year. What about monthly? 12 times per year. Okay, daily. Oh, good. There's always somebody that doesn't know how many days it is.
It's not mine.
There's usually someone that says 356. Okay, so when we're calculating interest, I'm not expecting you to memorize these formulas, so when we do this, I will put the interest formulas on the paper or on the board or something, but you have to know what everything stands for. So A here is your ending amount, sometimes that's called future value. P is your principal, or sometimes that's called your present value, it's your starting amount. R is your interest rate, it always has to be as a decimal. N is the number of times you compound per year, and T is time measured in years. So compound interest is different than simple interest in that we are continually adding to it. If I say it's compounded daily, then that means at the end of the day I take the amount, I calculate the interest, and I add that into the amount. So the amount is growing every single day. We could do it, the same thing with simple interest, but we'd have to do that calculation 365 times to get the amount in a year. So that's just very time consuming. This is a faster way of getting there. The second one, the more often you compound, the faster your amount's going to grow. You know, if I'm only compounding twice a year, then that's not going to make it grow as much as if I'm doing it every day. But then I could even extend that and say, okay, what if I wanted to compound every hour, or every minute, or every second, or every half a second? We could continually grow that. So in that scenario, we have continuous compounding. Fewer variables, E is, we've seen E on our paper, we know it's kind of a number like pi, it's a button on our calculator. So we use this one only when you hear that word continuous compounding. Otherwise, we use the first formula. So I have several examples on here. We'll go through at least a few of these and make sure that we know how to calculate interest. So if I ask you to find the future value is what variable? A, so I'm looking for A. Of $100, so what is the 100? What does that number represent? P, our principal. Invested at 4%, so what's that? R, so we have to do as a decimal, so 0.04. Compounded quarterly. Yes. That's my N, number of times per year. Quarterly is 4 times a year. All right, after a period of 13 quarters. So that's giving me my time. But time has to be measured in what? Years. So how do you change 13 quarters into years? Just divide by 4. There's 4 quarters in a year. So it would be 3.25 years. So now we're just plugging into the formula. So this is my formula that you don't have to memorize. So it's 100, 1 plus 0.04 over 4, N times T, so 4 times 3.25. That's really all the work you have to show me on these. Please write down what you're plugging in your formula, especially on test or quiz. That way if you make a mistake, I know where it happened. But then just put all this in your calculator at once. So I'm just going to type everything in at once. 100 parentheses 1 plus 0.04 divided by 4 to the 3 times 3.25 power. Interest, we're talking about money. So please put a $sign and round to 2 decimal places. Your final amount should be bigger than what you started with. If I round appropriately, I get that I ended with $113.81. Did everybody get that? Part B, I said, give me the amount of interest earned. How do I find the interest that I earned? Subtract from, yeah, we started with 100, we ended with 113.81. So if we subtract that, we get that we earned $13.81 interest. Is that one okay? Next example. Find what investing $1,000 at an annual rate of 10% compounded continuously would yield. So what do I have to do here? What's the 1,000? P, that's what we're starting with. My rate is 10%, so 0.1. I'm trying to find what it ends with, so that's my A. When you see the continuously, that tells me I'm using the second formula. What is my time? 1. I just said annual, so let's assume 1 year. So A is 1,000, P to the 0.1 times 1 power. There's a couple different E buttons on your calculator. If you do second and then the same column as the on button, there's the LN. If you do second LN, that brings up an E. Second and LN. All right, let's do a few more. We may not do all the ones on here, but Leah must pay a lump sum of $15,000 in 8 years. Okay, what does this $15,000 represent? That's my future value. That's what we need to have in the future. So this one, my A is $15,000. What amount deposited today? So I am looking for my P. At 4.8%, so the rate is 0.048. Compounded annually, so how many times a year? 1. In 42 months, how am I going to get my time out of that? 42 divided by 12, which is? Thank you. All right, so if we plug in what we have, the A is 15,000. Equals P, we don't know. 1 plus 0.048 divided by 1 to the 1 times 3.5 power. Okay, you're welcome to simplify this sum if you would like. 1 plus 0.048 divided by 1, that's just 1.048. 1 times 3.5, that's just 3.5. But how am I going to solve for P? What do we have to do? It's multiplied with P, so divide. So you can just put it all in your calculator at once. That way you don't have rounding error. So you're just going to type in 15,000 divided by 1.048 to the 3.5 power. So this is my principal, my starting amount. It should be less than we end with, so it should be less than 15,000. And I get $12,729.95. Is that one okay? Let's do one where we're solving for something different. Did you not get it?
Yeah, I was wondering if there was something wrong with the wall. I got it.
Okay, so this one, I'm asking you to find the rate. So the 10,000, what's that? $10,000 is available right now. So that's my present value, or my P. what annual interest rate, so I don't know my rate, so that's my question mark, is necessary for the money to increase to 15,000. I kind of left off some information, didn't I? Let's assume, let's say we had the 8 years and we're going to compound annually. Okay, so my number times the year would be 1 and my time would be 8. So if we plug in, so my A is 15,000, P is 10,000, 1 plus, I don't know my R, divided by 1, to the 1 times 8 power. What would you do first? What can I do with that 10,000? Divide. So if I divide by 10,000, in here, R divided by 1 is R. 1 times 8 is 8. How do you get rid of an 8th power? 8th root. I'm not going to put that in my calculator yet, just, you can. Then what else would you have to do? Subtract over the 1. So we have the 8th root of 1.5 with a minus 1 on the end. So my interest rate is 5.199, or you could say 5.2%. So I've taken a few different variations on this formula, solving for different pieces, but ultimately we're still just plugging everything in. Are there any questions about that? Okay. So